back in the day, when I was doing a lot more obedience training, I was doing a lot of board and trains. I was doing a lot of lessons. I was teaching people how to teach their dog obedience and stuff like the place command and all sorts of good things. And after I would be done for the day, I would walk back into my house and greet my dogs, and I would sit down and I would look at all of my dogs and think, I don't have to work that hard. I don't have to work that hard to have 19 hashtag just good dogs. It was the start of what ended up being a huge transformation in the things that I taught and the things that I trained when it came to my business beyond obedience. And it was because of that feeling of being totally disingenuous, that feeling of teaching people like you have to, practice place command and do all these exercises and make sure you do your homework and make sure you practice these things in all sorts of different areas so that your dog generalizes all that stuff. And then I'd walk into my house and look at my dogs who were hashtag just good dogs, but probably the most untrained dogs you were ever going to meet. And I would think, it just doesn't feel right. And last week I had a great question from Melissa. We were talking, if you missed that episode, we were talking about how to create calm in your home, how I create calm in my home living with multiple dogs. And I started talking about this idea of having a place to play. And that got me to thinking about a concept that I'd now like to share, a concept of living with dogs that helps make it so much easier, especially if you have multiple dogs, especially if you want to have a nice, calm home. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about that today. So today on the podcast, we are talking about one of my favorite topics, 4 situations of life, how to make life with your dogs super duper easy, crystal clear, so that your dog knows exactly what is expected and you can have the calm, peaceful house that you've always wanted, even though you have multiple dogs. That's what we're talking about today here on the podcast. Let's get into it. Are you worried that your fearful dog may hurt someone or something else? Do you have to prepare just to take a walk around the block? Hi, I'm Tracy, and I too had that dog, the one that you could only walk at nighttime when no one else was around. And I felt ashamed, and oh gosh, I wish that people could just see the dog that I know and love. I wanted the confidence to be able to walk my dog and not have to worry about who or what was around the corner. And I kept telling myself that if I just keep doing obedience drills and distracting with treats, that things would get better. Until I found the secret. Fear is not something that you can train out of a dog. In this podcast, you will find tips to help build your dog's confidence naturally, communication and understanding to foster that trust, and how to address those fear-based behaviors effectively so that you can enjoy a stress-free life with your dog. So if you're ready, stop chopping those chicken wieners, grab your notebook, and let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to Beyond Obedience. It's Tracy, your host. I am so glad that you are here with me today. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. It's actually one of my core foundational topics that I share now as someone who wants people to just get back to the ease of living with dogs. You can have an ease. There can be an ease and a peace to living with dogs because that's what it should be. I know there's so many times when I will be reading people's questions or posts and I can hear the struggle. I can hear the frustration. I can almost sense it in the questions and the comments that I read. And my first thought is always, oh gosh, living with dogs should not be this hard. Like living with dogs should not be this hard. And so I decided many years ago to do a massive shift, even though it may not be what people are searching for. And this has always been the challenge with my business. It may not be what people are searching for. Not a lot of people are Googling, how do I get a better relationship with my dog? Not a lot of people are Googling that. Most people are Googling things like, how do I get my dog to stop pulling on leash? How do I get my dog to stop jumping on the counter? How do I get my dog to whatever? And you'll get obedience classes. That's what you'll get. You'll get recommendations for trainers and obedience. And if you follow that path, many times you'll get told, okay, well, there's some training that your dog needs to be trained. And we're going to teach you how to train your dog. And then we're going to talk about being consistent and having proper timing and when to use the rewards and all of that stuff. And it becomes a job. It becomes an extra thing that you now have to do. Now, on top of everything else that's going on in your life, on top of all of the stuff you have to do, like, maintaining a job so that you can put food on the table. And maybe you're a mom that has to take kids places. Maybe you are, you've got extra, curricular things that you love to do. And on top of all of that, you now also have to take some time out of your day to train your dog and make sure you're consistent on training and make sure you don't, all of that stuff. And that's kind of the feedback that you'll get if you say, this is the problem I'm having with my dog. And one of the things that, as I mentioned in my opening, one of the things that always seemed very disingenuous to me was that I literally do not work that hard. I don't work that hard at all. And I have a lot of dogs. I don't take time out of the day to train them. I've mentioned this before. I don't walk around with a pocket full of treats. I very rarely have treats. I have treats right now. And full disclosure, it's because my son got a job at one of my favorite stores. Shout out to Feeds and Needs, one of my favorite stores. He got a job there and he was like, these treats are on sale. And I was like, okay, I'll go get some treats, right? And that's how that happened. But generally speaking, we don't have treats in the house. When I go for a walk, I don't have to gear myself with a treat pouch, stick chicken wieners in my pocket. I don't work that hard. And I don't think I'm special. I really don't think I'm special. I just think that I have discovered a way to live with dogs, to incorporate certain aspects of my life that living with this other species has enabled us to have a very cohesive life together. I have admittingly spent a very large portion of my life studying dogs and dog behavior. And if you want to know a little fun fact about me, I started doing that when I was in high school. I was reading dog behavior books when I was in high school. I've always kind of been a little bit of a geek when it comes to dog behavior. So long before I even decided to be a vet tech, long before I certainly decided to do this, I was always interested in dog behavior. So I think that has a lot to do with it. I have spent a long time sort of understanding them, devoting a lot of my time to understand them and their needs as opposed to enforcing my needs and my rules onto them. And I think that does help. But I have also come to realize that one of the things that I do is I have four sort of categories, I call it situations, 4 categories, 4 areas of life that I share with my dogs that I find are crystal clear for them, that I never stray from these things. And because of that, my dogs always know what to expect. Stuff isn't a shock to my dogs because I live with them in a certain way and within a certain pattern, within certain cycles that they can predict. And if you know me and you know that I talk a lot about, working with fearful dogs and the importance of a pattern of predictability, that holds true whether or not your dog is fearful or not. And so over the years, I've come to realize that there's sort of really just 4 areas. And that's what I wanted to share today, these 4 areas of living with dogs and how you too can create a simplicity that your dogs will fully understand, fully accept, because it runs with their nature. And you will find that everything else just gets easier. Before I do that, though, because I would be remiss not to mention this again, I want to remind everybody, if you and I are not connected and we're not pen pals, please do me a favor. Take some time. You can do it right now. Just press pause on this podcast. Do it right now. Go over to beyondobedience.ca. Hang on the page for a second. That's the website for Beyond Obedience. Hang on that page for a second. A little pop-up menu is going to come up and it's going to say, do you want to be part of the Canine Chronicles? Give me your name and your email, and then we're pen pals. And then you can get in touch with me. I like that better than social media, simply because social media can be fickle. Oh, it can be fickle. I will tell you, there was a time in my life where Facebook decided that I was not Tracy Franken. They just decided that, and they kicked me off my own page. And then I had to prove to them that I was Tracy Franken, which took a lot of convincing. And it got so rough, you guys. I swear there was a moment where I was like, maybe I'm not Tracy Franken. Like I don't even know who I am anymore. It took a while for me to get that page back, which was my reality check that said, this isn't probably the best way, to stay connected with my fellow dog lovers. So that's when I started the email list. It's a better way for us to stay in touch. If something happens and the Facebook group goes down or the Facebook page goes down, I can get in contact with you and say, hey, just so you know, I'm still around. So that's why I want everyone to do that. If you haven't done that, please do that. Sign up for the Canine Chronicles. Get on that list so we never lose touch. All right, got that out of the way. Let's get into this idea. Okay, so as I mentioned, I call it the 4 situations of life, or the 4 areas of life that I have specifically shaped that blend into the nature of how dogs think and feel, so that we can live harmoniously without a lot of conflict. Okay, I've broken it into 4 areas, and I've made it really simple for them. So those 4 areas for my dogs are work, play, eating or food, and rest or sleep. 4 areas of their life. So if we're not working, we're playing. If we're not playing, we might be eating. If we're not eating, we're resting. And that's it. Work, play, eat, and rest. That's it. 4 situations. And because of that, because I've kept it that simple for them, they kind of know what is expected of them at all times. They understand, what are we doing when we're playing versus what are we doing when we're working? And I never muddy those waters. I never change how I act, how I show up, how I behave. I never muddy those waters. So let's break that down a little bit more so that you kind of get this idea. So for work, okay, when my dogs are quote unquote working, that is when we are walking on leash. Okay, all of my on-leash walks with my dogs are considered work. And that's done that way because I'm going to use the word inflicting, but I am inflicting boundaries on them by putting a collar and leash on them. I'm putting human equipment on them. So in that moment, I'm asking the dogs to defer to me for guidance because we are on leash. Now, I will tell you, and anyone who's seen my dogs walking will tell you, they are not trained to walk at a heel. I have spent 0 hours teaching my dogs how to walk on the leash or to walk at a heel. What I have done is I have helped them understand that when they're on the leash, they have to defer to me. I don't have a lot of rules. I don't really care about position. In fact, one of the things that my dogs are asked to do is to be able to switch positions on the walk whenever I ask them to. They are quite frequently, because I usually walk more than one dog, they're quite frequently asked to switch position based on what's coming at me at the walk and based on the dogs that I'm walking. So quick example for that is one of my dogs, Rue, is not overly happy about people. She's always been innately fearful and shy of new people. And because of that, when I walk Rue, I usually have other dogs with her. I will move her to the inside beside me and move a noof to the outside if we're passing people, because I tell you, I've had people do the walk by petting. Have you ever had that? Like, it's one thing to come up and ask someone if you can pet your dog, but I've actually had people where I've watched them reach out and just touch my dogs as they're going by, like a drive-by. Like a drive. It's true. I don't know if any, tell me in the comments. You have on Spotify now, you actually have the ability to leave me comments and whatnot. Tell me in the comments if this has ever happened to you, because it has happened to me. So as a result, because I am dedicated to Rue and her fearfulness of being an advocate for her, I don't allow people to touch that dog. And so I will move her over. So my dogs are actually quite frequently asked to move and switch positions based on what's coming at me. If I have off-leash dogs coming at me, I will usually put my male noof on the outside, because most dogs are not going to mess with him. Just, he's an intact male. He's a big guy. He's very calm. He's very non-reactive. And you know, off-leash dogs running at us will kind of hit that presence and be like, oh, and kind of take a step back. It gives me an opportunity to send them away, all sorts of stuff. My point is this. On the walk, they have to defer to me because I'm going to switch them around. So I don't ask my dogs to always walk on the left or the right. I don't think you should. I think dogs should have the ability to move on either side of you, always passing behind you, all of that good stuff. So when we're walking, we're working, and that working means you have to defer to me. I don't really care where you are. You don't have to walk at a perfect heel. You're not allowed to pull me. That is a rule. Don't pull me. I don't like to be pulled. But you can go and sniff things and that sort of thing. That's work, okay? In contrast to that, play happens when I take your equipment off. I don't allow dogs to play with collars on, because I have seen all too many times when dogs, especially dogs that like to bite at each other's necks, I have seen it all too many times where dogs get their teeth caught in collars. So when my dogs play, they're naked. They're naked. I don't leave collars on them. So when we're in a secure area and I'm allowing the dogs to play, I will take their collars off, and my body language changes. I get down, I start going, oh, let's go play stuff. We might grab some toys. All of that indicates play. Play is much different from work. Okay. Now here's what I mean to say about why I don't muddy those waters. When we're working, we are not meeting other dogs, and we are not playing with other dogs. So my dogs learn very, very early on that work is work. When we're walking, that's what we do. We walk. We're not going to be engaging with other dogs. I've never broken that rule. If I come across somebody and they're like, oh my God, can our dogs play? We would have to go to a place that is a secure place with a fence where I can let my dogs off leash. That's how they'll play. I've never stopped and went, okay, let's let them kind of wrestle or play or sniff. I've never done that. I've never muddied those waters. So I don't have dogs that see other dogs and go, oh my gosh, I want to go play, because I've never let them do it. So they know. Okay. Play is play. Play means your equipment is off and we're playing. Very, very simple. Our eating rituals, as I described in the previous episode last week when I was talking about finding those hot spots where dogs get amped up, I do have an eating ritual for my dogs. I allow my dogs to be excited. I think food is a celebration. I always use food as a celebration. I use the idea of a celebration just to get food. I'd be like, we should celebrate this. And they're like, really? What did you do today? I'm like, I put pants on. Let's celebrate. Like, I will do whatever I can to get food, and it's a celebration. So I don't take that away from my dogs, but we do have some guardrails that we put up for that. So my dogs know, like, this is where we eat. This is how we eat. The rules of eating are that you are to keep keep your face in your own bowl. You're not to take from other people's bowls. You eat your stuff and then you move away and go to the bathroom and do whatever, but you don't linger around. You're not lingering around trying to find other food. Now, once all the dogs have left the bowls, honestly, Irie usually comes back to like flip the bowls over because I stack he's a smart little bugger. It's because I stack the bowls when I'm walking to the place where I feed them. And because I feed my dogs a combination of fresh food, raw food, and kibble, there's usually residue of the raw on the bottoms of the bowls. And Irie's figured that out. So, but he does know he has to wait. He can't be flipping over bowls or trying to get to the bottom of bowls while dogs are still there. So there are rules and guide rails in place for that ritual. And then finally, the ritual of rest or sleep is that because I have always said there is no playing in my house. Let me repeat that. There's no playing in my house. That is a rule that I started. I talked about this last week as well. That is a rule I started when my kids were very small because I was like, I had a baby on the floor and I was like, I can't have large dogs running around playing. That's a recipe for disaster. So I started very, very, very long time ago. How old is my daughter? My daughter's 20. So 20 years ago, this has been a rule that I have not changed since. There's no playing in my house. So when they cross that threshold from being outside where play happens and they come in, they can come in energetically. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like when you come in all quiet and solemn. They can come in energetically. But very shortly after they come in, they know that inside our house, this is rest. Every area of my house is rest, right? I have crates. I'm not a person that's against crates. My crates, I have a crate in my room. I have a crate downstairs. We have crates in the house. Nike has a crate, but we don't make our dogs go to their crates for rest time because every room in my house is rest time, except for the kitchen where there's just no entry. You're not allowed in my kitchen. I've always put that too. That's just because I don't like dogs mooching. I really don't. You're not allowed in my kitchen, right? They push that boundary, I will say, because they're dogs. They will push that boundary. They like have that, like we're sitting outside of the kitchen and we're lying there watching you two cooking. And then I'll look up and like the paw will have kind of crossed the imaginary threshold of my kitchen. And I'll eventually, if I'm not really paying attention, I'll look back and like Nike's like right beside like the fridge or like the countertop. And I'm like, hey, you sneaky little, like, so, I mean, they're dogs, right? They're going to do dog things. They're dogs and that's fine. And it's just like, get out of my kitchen. Like, you'll hear that a lot in my house. Get out of my kitchen. Like, you're not allowed in my kitchen. So all of my house is rest except for the kitchen, which is a no-go zone. Right? That and Paisley's room. Paisley's room is also a no-go zone, but that's because the cat has made that threshold. The cat also has rules, and the cat has decided that no dog shall pass this threshold, and they don't. And so that's it. That is literally my dog's life. That is literally my dog's life. So listen, I want you to kind of take into consideration all the little pieces of that make it very simple for my dogs and all the different signals that are there for that. So for work, for example, because the dogs are wearing equipment, the equipment itself signals a state of mind that means I need to pay attention to you. I need to defer to you. So my conversations, my on-leash conversations with my dogs can be very, very subtle. They don't require a lot of leash corrections or pops or whatnot because over the time they have learned that when that collar is on, when that leash is on, that means I need to look to you. And you can utilize that as the idea that the equipment is a state of mind and a precursor to an event. Because back in the day, honestly, since I moved to Nova Scotia, I haven't done it since I moved here. Mostly because we don't get the same winters that I used to get in Eastern Ontario. But I used to have, I still have it. I have a sled for the noofs, and I used to have a harness and whatnot. And the noofs used to pull a sled. And believe it or not, the harness that the dogs wear for pulling the sled signaled what they would be doing, which meant they had to actually go in front of me. Like they were allowed to sort of pull on their own in front of me. And that was signaled by their equipment. So much so, and I will tell the story really quickly, so much so that the one time I forgot, I hooked Arlington up and I got the sled all done and whatnot. And the kids were on the sled. It was going to be, if I was, my kids were much smaller back then. Everybody was all excited. And I was like, okay, let's go. And he wouldn't go. And I'm like, you know how to do this. Like, what are you doing? Go, like pull the sled. And he wouldn't. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. He would walk a little bit and then he would sit and he'd look at me. And I'm like, what are you doing? And I realized that I'd forgotten to take his walking collar off. Like I'd walked him out from the facility on his collar, hooked him up to the harness. I forgot to take his walking collar off. So he had a conflict of equipment. He would start to pull. He'd feel the pull of the leash or the harness, but his collar was still on. So he thought I was pulling, and he's like, oh, I'm not allowed to pull on the leash. So he'd sit down. Took me a while to figure it out. But that's how dogs make these associations. So you can literally have it where your dog, if you're very consistent, this is how you constantly show up for them. Work, I put a collar on you, that means we're working. And working with me isn't like all work and no play kind of a thing. Working with me is fun. I'll do a whole other episode on that about making your walk incredible. I'll do that some other time. But when my dogs are with me, quote unquote, working is fun. It's not a boring, dull walk. I'm a hoot. I'm fun at parties. You know what I'm saying? For a dog, I'm really dull at human parties. I'm an introvert and I'm weird and I hang out in the corner and I pet the cat. But for my dogs, I'm a riot. Right? So work is when the collar's on. In contrast to that, as I say, the collar comes off, we go outside, the dogs know, oh, this is playtime. It's easy for them. When they come in, they know, I don't have to say to them, go to your bed or go lie down. I just let them in. And they'll kind of mill around. They'll go and get a drink, all that sort of stuff. But then they all just kind of be like, okay, they lay back down because they know in this house, it's rest time. It's really, really easy. We've put together these 4 situations of life. I consistently show up the exact same way for them every single time. I never stray from that. I never let them meet other dogs on leash. I always take their equipment on for playtime. Their eating ritual is always the same, and rest is rest, right? So for you, if you're someone who's like, gosh, that sounds nice, like I wish I could do that, you can start that now. You can figure out your situations. What does work mean for you? What does play mean for you? And start to really incorporate that. If you want more help or you want to talk a little bit more about that, go into the Facebook group, Living Beyond Obedience, and let's talk about it. Maybe I can help you with your rituals. Maybe you can let me know what's going on, help you out a little bit, whatever. But that is one of the easiest ways. And as I say, I don't work that hard. I don't work that hard to train my dogs. My dogs, I don't have place boards. Like, full disclosure, I taught place for a lot of times. Place is an incredible tool and it's very, very useful. I'm not discrediting place. And in fact, I still have the videos on how to teach place. And it comes in handy for sure, especially dogs that have, hyperactive dogs or anxiety or all of that stuff. It's a great thing. I'm not trying to take away from that. But what I am saying is that for me personally, I don't have any place boards if you come into my house, it's not like I'm going to send my dogs to place and be like, go place while these people come in. My dogs are my dogs. They wander around the house. They go where they want to go. They lay down where they want to lay down. They're not restricted in that way, but that is done by design. And you can have that too. So even if you're someone that's like, I like place, then keep place. Make it part of your design, right? Actually, I guess with that, before I go, I got to put the caveat out there because everyone thinks when I start talking about this that I am discrediting the benefit of obedience. I am not. Okay? I am not. I am beyond obedience, but that still means you can have some obedience. Okay? Obedience is teaching your dog English as a second language, and it's good to have a shared language with your dog. It does help. Obviously, my dogs have to know their name. They have to know come. Do my dogs know sit? No, not really. I know, because everybody always does that. Whenever I take them like into pet stores or whatnot, and I always get that, can I give them a treat? I'm like, you can try. And then they're like, sit. And I'm like, oh, they don't sit. Like, they don't sit. I mean, they know how to sit. They just don't sit on command. Why? Because what's the point of sit? What's the purpose of sit? Why sit? They're not doing, they're standing there staring at you, being good. They're not jumping on you and they're not doing anything. Just give them the damn cookie. That's how I feel. I guess that's another topic for another day. I'll do an episode called Why Sit, because it is a pet peeve of mine. It's a pet peeve of mine, because maybe it's because I come in as, a dog professional and people are like, your dogs don't even know how to sit. And I'm like, no, because they don't need to. They don't need to. My dogs don't do tricks for treats. They just don't do that. I don't have that dance, monkey dance. I don't do that with my dogs. They don't need to sit. Anyway, I digress. I went on too far there. All right. I hope that helps somebody. If you like this episode, please be sure to share this episode with your friends. Share it with other dog lovers like you and me. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please take a moment and give me a 5-star written review, because that really does help push the podcast out to more and more people. That pushing it out to more and more people is going to allow me to fulfill a lot of the exciting things I have coming up for this podcast. I want to start doing some interviews and all sorts of fun stuff. So if you could take that time and just, if you're on Apple, give me that 5-star review. If you're on Spotify, as I mentioned before, if you're on Spotify, I now can see your comments and I can answer them, which I'm super duper excited about. So if you're on Spotify, leave me a comment. What you think of this episode? Also, have you had the flyby petting? Like, has that happened to you where like people are just randomly walking by, they just stick their hand out and pet your dog? Have you had that? I mean, the nerve. The nerve of some people. Am I right? Anyway. All right. That's it for today. As always, get out there today and be the person that your dog thinks you are, because your dog thinks that you are amazing. And so do I. Have a great week, everybody. And I will talk to you all next week. Bye for now. Oh, and one more thing. As always, this podcast is meant for entertainment and education purposes only and should never replace hands-on professional training for those that are really struggling with their dogs. If you feel that your dog is a danger to you, other dogs, other animals, anybody, please reach out and get hands-on professional help for you and your dog. All right, that's it. See you next week. Bye.